Okay, we're down at the Dawn Centre at the YASC today, and I've got with me James. Hi, James.
Hi, how you doing?
We're just going to ask a few questions about the homeless review that's happening presently in Leicester. So, right, James, in your experience, what are the main things that lead someone to become homeless?
Well, there's a few main factors. The most prevalent one, I would say, is family breakdown, whether that be with a relationship with a man or a woman, or whether that be like splitting up for whatever reason and being away from kids and stuff like that. So there is quite a lot of factors, but the main one seems to be, for me, family breakdown, loss of employment, and obviously getting into trouble with tenancies, with rent arrears and stuff like that.
Okay. And what do you think are the main things the homeless review should be looking at?
Well, for starters, it should really be looking at increasing provision, not reducing provision, which is what they're talking about. They're basically talking about like doing away with the advice centres, well, they're going to keep one, and they're also talking about cutting the beds from, I think it's 607 to about 360 odd, when they're actually saying in their own review that the demand is going to increase due to the common welfare reforms, which are going to kick into place in April. So they're actually saying that the demand is going to increase, but yet they actually say in the document that they want to cut the services available. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and how do you think priorities should be implemented?
Well, like obviously, like there are certain groups that should be protected straight away. Like the most vulnerable in society should always be protected, of course. Like now, it does look at, like the review does look at that, but it doesn't say how it's going to implement that, because the biggest problem you actually have with homelessness issues that I've noticed in Leicester is the local connection criteria, which is one of the things that actually, if you don't have a local connection, then the City Council will not actually house you anyway. So you actually have to go to independent providers. So that's something that the review hasn't even looked at. Yeah. Which is very relevant to the common welfare reforms, because basically if you're considered to make yourself intentionally homeless, now that actually has a broad remit. Making yourself intentionally homeless could actually be coming from not paying your rent. Now that's you intentionally making yourself homeless, so therefore the council do not have this, they have no statutory duty, and they do talk a lot about the statutory duty in the review. Yeah. So it sounds to me like they're actually trying to cut this statutory duty so that they can justify cutting the beds. That's what it seems like to me.
Right. Okay, and the council intend to use the new powers given to it by the government to offer some people private accommodation. Do you think this proposal will adequately meet the expected demand on services due to the welfare reforms?
Well, definitely not, because like straight away they have to cover for, I think it's 242 places that are going to be going from the hostel beds, so that has to be covered straight away. And then there's also the increased demand that's coming from the welfare reform, so you're talking about like, this is just pie in the sky figures, like 200 and 300 on top of that as well. But the thing is, like, as I've actually, several people have actually raised, who are these landlords going to be? Is it going to be substandard housing? Is it going to be like excellent housing? Like, have they actually looked at any of these things? And who is Homecome? Because they're saying it's private landlords. It's the only one we see is actually Homecome. Now Homecome has got a lot of conflicting reports. Some people are saying that it's connected to the council. Some people are saying it's not connected to the council. So like we need to actually know like who are Homecome and how are they, have they actually got all these landlords in place already? Because if they're not, then how are they going to provide the service?
I think with Homecome, I think one of the original directors was a city councillor, but whether I think he's not in that post anymore.
This again would actually like that would actually raise alarm bells to me straight away. So you're talking about like, does he have a vested interest in this, or has he influenced the decisions of the council in this? Which is something that I would want to ask the council personally.
I think he had to give up that role. I think that's what actually happens when you
of course,
But you know, as to who's running it now, I've no idea. Do you agree that going down the privatisation route will be implemented fairly anyway?
No, the only way I see anyone benefit from this is the private landlords. Now, private landlords do actually have a reputation, not just in Leicester, but across the UK, of being very predatory. Now, basically, this means that, like, when it comes to, say, something like repairs, like whether it be heating or hot water or stuff, they're not very quick at doing it. Now, it says in the document that they would have to provide the exact same services the Leicester City Council would, but how the Leicester City Council going to implement that? That's what I would ask. And also, I just, like, since I've actually had several bad experiences with landlords, like, technically you do actually have legal rights when it comes to actually housing in private landlords, but practically that doesn't, like, if you speak to Shelter, they will actually confirm this. Practically that is not actually the case. So basically a landlord can come into your house at any time, take all your stuff out and change the locks. What can you do? There's no legal recourse for you then. Like, you're already out somewhere, and this is something they haven't taken into account.
Do you think that there is enough hostel accommodation across the city to meet demand?
No, I can tell you, I know for a fact there isn't, because, like, I can tell you, I know, like, maybe 5 or 6, I'd say 6 people that are actually rough sleeping at the moment. Now, these are for a various amount of reasons, of course. Now, this is just people that we actually know about. There's also, if you look at the figures in the review as well, it says that over 2,000 people presented homeless last year alone, and some of them are sofa surfing, so they're technically not home, not have a home anyway. So, like, there is not enough hostels at the moment, so I don't understand where the logic is in actually cutting the spaces. I can understand what they're saying, that, like, people shouldn't be repeat homeless, but that comes down to the services that are actually offered in the hostels. Like,
and do you agree that people should stay in a hostel for the shortest period possible?
Yeah, of course. That's of course, like, it should be only temporary accommodation. But, and again, as I said in the last question, that actually comes down to the actual services that are available within the hostels. Now, for years, like, they have got a lot of funding for doing not a lot of work. Like, just for example, the City Council, I've actually stayed in the Dawn Centre. We're sitting in the Dawn Centre just now. Now, I was in a temporary bed. Now, it was only the outreach worker who actually works with the rough sleepers that actually done anything to help me. It wasn't actually any of the workers. All the workers done that sit in the office is sit in the office and watch the cameras. Now, what sort of service is that they're providing? That's the questions that should be looked at in this homelessness review, which haven't obviously been looked at.
And how do you think people who currently use the day centre will cope without the use of the day centre in the future?
I can tell you that the day centre is used for a wide range of reasons. There's a lot of people that are illiterate that come here, and they come here to get the staff to help them fill in forms, whether that be for social security, whether that be applying for jobs and whatever. There's also, like, the rough sleepers themselves actually come here to get a shower, because it's the only place they can get a shower, and they also get a hot breakfast in the morning, so that's going to be done away with, so they won't have that service as well. Then there's people that are actually what I would call vulnerably housed. That's people that have just gone into a tenancy after being in the homeless system, because there is supposed to be resettlement plans in place when you move out of a hostel, but I've yet to see one implemented. I've come out of hostels about 5 times over the course of my life, and I've actually went on one of these resettlement plans, as they call them, and that's all it is. It's a plan. I've yet to see one being implemented.
Should the council's one night out project only apply to new rough sleepers?
Well, obviously not. Like, so basically you're saying that you abandon the people that are rough sleeping at the moment. That's basically what that sounds to me like. Like, I didn't even notice that it said new rough sleepers until someone pointed it out to me, and I was like, well, what about the like, Leicester actually has the highest proportion of rough sleepers outside of London, and you're basically saying, oh no, we'll just leave them. So what are they supposed to do? What
do you think that statistic says about Leicester?
Well, it says that the provision in Leicester has not been looked at properly. For starters, that's the current provision. I'm not talking about the provision that they want to have. I'm talking about the current provision is not fit for purpose. So should they not be addressing that rather than actually, like, cutting provisions?
And what do you think the key is to stop somebody becoming homeless again?
Well, again, it comes down to, like, as I said, the resettlement plans. They're not worth the paper they're printed on. Like, what people need is they need support while they're in hostel accommodation to find out why they become homeless in the first place, because you actually have to identify problems before you can solve these problems. Now, this obviously, like, people do have to take responsibility for themselves, but there are actual service providers within the council and within these day centres that actually should be working together to identify these problems with individuals.
Yeah.
Now, there should be the way I see it, they should actually be linking up more, like the actual support that people get, because as soon as someone leaves a hostel, they're basically abandoned. That's my personal view, and it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
They should identify what problems they may have in the future. You have it at the moment, a health and safety assessment. You have that in any walk of life. Like if you're going with a big group of people, you actually have to make an assessment of what health and safety issues might arise. Should you not be doing the same thing when you're actually taking people out from the hostel system into a new tenancy and seeing what the assessment of what could actually lead them to being homeless again, and then addressing that problem?
Right. And do you agree with the cuts in homeless placements and the advice centres?
No, I don't. I totally disagree with that. As I said before, like, there's going to be an increase in demand on services, not a reduction in demand on services. So it's actually madness, and they should consider such.
Okay. And are you concerned that these plans might have a negative impact on some people in the community?
I'm not concerned they might have a negative impact. I'm actually almost certain they will have a negative impact. I'm willing to put £100 on it now. They will have a negative impact. I'm sorry, I'm not. I don't even mean that. I'm not trying to be light with that. I'm actually being deadly serious. This will not solve the problem. This will create more problems, and it will harm the economy of Leicester as well, because there's going to be more homeless people on the streets. That's going to be seen by visitors that come to the city. There's going to be an increase on police services, there's going to be an increase on ambulance services, there's going to be an increase on shopkeepers complaining about homeless people rough sleeping in their doors. So this is going to have an economic effect on the whole of Leicester. It's not just about the city centre, it's about the whole of Leicester, because when you kick people out of the city centre, they have to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And James, can you just tell us a little bit about your experience of being homeless?
Well, when I was 16 years old, I was in care at the time, and I was actually took out of care and into a hostel on St Peter's Road, which is just up the back there. Now, this place, bearing in mind I was 16 years old, and this is one of the biggest problems I feel. Like, I was 16 years old, I was actually moved into a hostel, and I was sharing a room with 3 other people. 2 of them were crack addicts, 1 of them was a heroin user. Now, is that the sort of place you should be putting a 16-year-old? Really? Now that's just my first experience of homelessness. Now, obviously, like, I've actually moved about a bit, so like sometimes I wouldn't say I've intentionally made myself homeless, but I've been in homeless situations because I've sort of put myself in that situation. But I've still found that every single time the biggest problem seems to be you're just a number. It's just about, basically, so long as you pay your rent, they don't care. And that's I'd say that in every hostel I've been in. The biggest problem is about rent. It's not about the person.
James, thank you very much for talking to me.
You're welcome. Thank you.